Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 86 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. This week we're speaking with celebrity impersonator John Di Domenico. You probably know him best for his killer Trump impression, but there's a whole lot more to John's talents than meets the eye or the ear. This week's show is sponsored by The Predator. Heck, we know the new film has little in common with the Arnold classic. We got you in the theater with that name all the same. Gotcha. This week I'm going to get a little confessional about the show. I missed last week's episode. My schedule got crazy, and I just didn't have enough time to record it, and certainly record it properly. So my apologies. I bummed me out. My main excuse, well, that's one that happens only once a year, maybe once in a lifetime. I just turned 50, and I celebrated some really good friends in Breckenridge for several days. It's a ski town in Colorado, and not a big ski guy, but in the summertime, it's just right. But here's the reason, part two, why there wasn't a new show last week. I guess you could say I'm trying to do an Adam Carolla. This show is my private, personal pirate ship, a way to have my say about pop culture and Hollywood with no strings attached. You hear that, Mr. Man? Now, I've worked for different websites in the past, and I'm really grateful for what they offered. A big platform, lots of flexibility in the kinds of stories that I could write, but it's not really what I wanted. I wanted to do exactly what I thought was right and proper and fun and good about Hollywood and the culture at large. Now I hope I've got a lot of those building blocks set up for me to push forward, but easier said than done. My website, Hollywood in Toto, is part of my pirate ship. I guess you could say this show is another deck on that ship, just to kind of keep that analogy afloat. I really believe that we need more voices on the right talking back to Hollywood, confronting the hate that comes out of the far, far left. Not everyone, but certainly certain people in Hollywood are spewing that kind of vitriol. Also, I want to praise the content that speaks to freedom, American values, and also promote young artists who are just coming up. Maybe they don't have a way to connect with the mainstream media, but my site, this show, maybe it can be a little bit of a push for them and maybe a little bit of the push they need. The talent obviously will speak for itself. Now, none of this is easy, and the odds are really stacked against me. You know, you hear about how Facebook is changing its algorithms. You hear about what's happening with Google, the Google culture. I'm sure they're not exactly chomping at the bit to promote my stories via Google searches. I'm not noticing anything. I'm not saying anything conspiratorial, but it's really hard to go independent with a website and podcast in 2018. It's great that all the resources and the availability of the technology is here, but you know what? There's a lot of other people doing pretty much what I'm doing as well. It makes it really hard. What does it all mean? Well, it means I work 7 days a week. I don't like to take holidays. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming into my holiday extravaganza. Didn't regret it, but really was itching to get back to work. And also the fact that my wife, I'll call her Mrs. Hollywood in Toto, has been very kind about all of the steps in this journey. I haven't been making a heck of a lot of money in recent years because I'm kind of trying to build this pirate ship, and it isn't easy on multiple levels, but she's been super supportive, and if this takes off like I think it will as we head into 2019, she's going to have a big responsibility, or at least the credit will go plenty in her direction just based on all the support and love and consideration she's given me. So thank you to her. She doesn't listen to the show. Our ideologies don't exactly mesh, and she's pretty busy raising our 2 kids, as am I, but wanted to thank her quickly for that. Also wanted to thank you for listening, for sharing bits of information about the show, for telling friends, hopefully. Perhaps you've done that. If you haven't, I wouldn't mind it. But also, let me know what you think, what you like about the show, what you'd like to see more of, what you would prefer to hear less of. You can always email me, christian@hollywoodintoto.com. I will do my best to respond and to incorporate your good advice and to take all of your constructive criticism in the method and the manner which it serves. So thanks again. Hopefully there'll be no more gaps in new episodes. The show continues. Hollywood in Toto will continue into Oscar season. And again, thank you for all of your time.
Don't touch that dial. You're listening to my daddy's podcast.
And now here's the hit tweet of the week. Actress Ellen Pompeo of Grey's Anatomy fame doesn't mind smearing a decent man, if he happens to be part of the right. It's why she went on the attack against Brett Kavanaugh after an absurd Hail Mary attack on his conduct as a younger man. The allegations are pretty ugly, and they were just as fuzzy and ridiculous and far-fetched, and I didn't believe a syllable of it. But here's her tweet all the same. I call BS. He has always thought women were here for him to do with what he chooses. Just remember that the next time the left says, oh, that boorish Trump tweet is out of control. Just think about what Ellen had to say.
You're listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
My hit tip of the week is the taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. I'd say I was thinking about this before the show. I don't know many movies that really capture that essential New York spirit better than this 1974 classic. It's got Walter Matthau at his crustiest. It's a character study and a first-rate thriller. What could you ask for? The story follows a hijacked subway train, but that doesn't really capture all the things that are in this movie. The great lines, the pieces of character work, and the menace that is existing just below the surface of New York City. And I think to really appreciate just how good this movie is, you have to watch the remake with Denzel Washington and John Travolta. It was watchable. It was perfectly fine. I think Travolta was over the top in a way that didn't suit the material well, but it's almost like a masterclass in how to take a great property and ruin it, or at least forget all the things that make it so darn wonderful. And here's a quick fun fact about the original Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Quentin Tarantino lifted that movie's gang color coding for his breakout hit Reservoir Dogs. Pretty cool. The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original, is on Amazon Prime right now. Now, let's get to this week's HitCast interview. You know, I've loved celebrity impersonators all my life. I grew up watching Rich Little, Fred Travalena. Now I'm digging John Di Domenico. John shot to stardom when people realized he did a killer Donald Trump impression just after Trump himself started running for the White House. I think we all know what happened there, but what was amazing about John's career is that it absolutely exploded. His life changed dramatically once Trump won the nomination. He was in demand, he was working constantly, and of course putting on that big, boofy blonde wig and all the makeup that goes with the Donald Trump impression. Now, it's 2018, things have calmed down a bit for John, but he's still working regularly, doing a variety of gigs, and of course, working on that Trump impression to make it just right all the time. He's a perfectionist. He's always studying what Trump has to say, how he says it. And you also get a few samples about kind of what goes on behind the scenes with an impersonator, all the work that goes into each different impersonation. It ain't easy. I love the way he can kind of break down those little bits of information. Also, the story behind why he became an impressionist in the first place. It's really remarkable. Here's my chat with a huge talent, the very funny John Di Domenico. John, thank you for joining the show. You know, I was reading a little bit about your background. You were a kid from Pennsylvania. You had a bit of a vocal impediment. You did a bit of an imitation, and all of a sudden it went away. Was it kind of like a transformative moment you thought something changed within you, or did it take a while before you realized you had a knack for this, a gift, and it could be more than just a party trick? It could be something kind of special.
It was one of those things where, you want to be heard, and you want to communicate with people and not be teased for the way you speak. So doing the voices served multiple purposes. I was able to entertain adults, which I really got a kick out of, but I was also able to be understood, and it was just a very affirming thing that adults thought you were funny and would applaud and tip you $1. It was one of those cool things. But then when I wasn't doing that, you can't be on all the time. It was an issue, and I remember being tested, and then my school at the time had a really good speech pathology program, the Wissahickon School District, where I went to school, and I was in speech communication, speech therapy from first grade to 8th grade.
My goodness.
For 2 times a week or something like that. I can remember. I remember sitting in front of the mirror, and oddly, I remember one of the speech therapists squeezing my face to make fish lips to pronounce the O. And I always think of Trump now because of that, with the way he forms his lips and his words. So it helped me a lot understanding mechanics of voices and how to manipulate sound a little better. And, if you're doing if you're doing Austin Powers, baby, the voice is more in the front of your mouth, and someone like Trump is very, very throaty. And, a lot of voices are you look for similarities in voices, because I used to do Lieutenant Columbo. Folks, I hate to bother you. I'm a little confused, So they were teaching you to not do a lot of those things so you could, pronounce words properly and be understood and communicate. And I'm always very cognizant of that. And I still slip. I still can't pronounce certain words. Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing, it's both inspiring that you were able to kind of have that particular issue and now looking at what you do, but also it's sort of like this odd, perfect storm of this is your current career and everything in your childhood kind of led up to it.
It's very ironic that this is what I do, and I'm not an accountant. Not having to speak. This is how I make my living, is speaking. So funny.
When I was a kid, I loved Rich Little, Fred Tremelina. Impressionists always just scored with me, and I think just given that you're a veteran impressionist, do people have misunderstandings of the work you do, either how hard it is or the training, or they just assume that you can just spend an hour or two in front of the mirror and you get it? What would maybe surprise people about your line of work that
I think what would surprise people is there's no standard. There's no school for impersonation. All the impressionists that I know all have a different technique. It's somewhat like acting. I take a more scientific approach because of speech therapy, and I research where the person's from. I like pieces because I learned that through acting. For me, when I started doing Jay Leno, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. What's going on? You obviously listen to the voice. Now, someone like Leno's voice goes real high, and he also goes, hi guys, how you doing? But he has an impediment because his tongue's always in the way. So his impediment, I can't get by that. I hear that first. So I'm able to put that in, but he's originally from Boston, so I want to be able to put the Boston in there, not on every word, but I want to build that in. So I kind of layer it and build upon it and try to look in one area. And I know a buddy of mine, Dave Burley, who's a really well-known impressionist, and he's been on America's Got Talent. He went really far in that show, and I said to him, because I'm interested too when I talk to other impressionists, like, how do you break down a voice? And he's like, well, I just, I hear it and I figure it out. And then I spoke to another friend of mine, Marcel Forestieri. He's an actor impressionist too, and he's more scientific. He and I kind of work on the scientific end and look for, nasal placement, throat placement, vocal production, wind, how hard you're pushing it out, all these, whatever gets you through the day, and also certain things are genetic. If you do not have a low register voice, it's just harder. I would love to do Harrison Ford, and I have tried, but I can't get my voice down low enough to kind of, to maintain his voice. But some mornings I'll wake up and I'll have vocal fry, and I can do Morgan Freeman. Fantastic. It sounds fantastic. I'm like, wow, this is great. And by 11 a.m., it kind of dissipates.
It's gone.
Yeah, because my voice has kind of risen up. Everyone's voice, since you hadn't spoken in 8 hours of sleeping, your voice kind of gets a little naturally lower because the wind, the air is coming, is just freshly passing over your vocal cords.
You know, I was thinking about the 2016 presidential campaign. I know you were super busy, a lot of stories written about you at the time for all the obvious reasons. What jumps out at you as the most peculiar, the most amazing, the most bizarre sort of part of that whole ride? Because, I mean, obviously we saw it from the cultural perspective. We saw you on every media possible doing your Trump imitation. But from your perspective, what is it the kind of the can't forget moment?
There are so many, because I got to meet so many actors and got to be on so many great shows and so many amazing situations. But, you know, meeting Conan O'Brien was incredible. And working for him and doing the show, being on ABC's The View and meeting all of them, being over at Fox about 50 different times, working with my friend Tom Shalhoub, who I did theater with in the early 90s. It's just been this incredible opportunity getting cast in these big budget commercials and, you know, spending 3 weeks in Canada shooting a web series. It's just been incredible. And I don't know if you know the show Transparent, but the woman who created that, the person who created that show called me out of the blue, got connected to me through a friend and was wanting to do some work with me, like a voiceover kind of thing. I was like, oh my God, like this is so incredible that somebody whose TV show had just won the Emmy or whatever, the Golden Globe for Best Series, the showrunner from that show was calling me. You know, Mark Hamill reached out to me through Twitter and messaged me, and we've communicated a few times. So it's just, in the aggregate, it's all of this amazing stuff, all because I started doing Trump back in 2004, and it gave me this amazing runway, and it got me in the door first because there just weren't that many people doing it. And then, you know, as you probably know and the rest of the world knows, the Trump impersonators now are coming out of the woodwork. So I'm just so grateful that I was one of the first people doing him back in 2004, and it kind of put me in that great position. You know, everything's timing and luck in the entertainment business, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right voice.
Yeah, but you also had the talent, and you had the reps behind your belts to make it happen. Yeah, one of the things, you know, a lot of the pundits, the best and the brightest, didn't think that Trump had a chance at the White House. Obviously, he did, but you seem to have a better sense of his potential. You thought it could happen. What do you think that you saw about him through your particular prism that other people missed?
Well, I became an avatar for him. And this is what I tried to explain to people. I was in a unique position. People whispered, I'm not saying this as a joke, people literally whispered in my ear and would say, I'm voting for you. And my wife hates you, my husband hates you, my kids hate you, but I'm voting for you. And I cannot tell you how many times people confessed to me, because I was their avatar. They were so excited, you know, for Trump that I became this avatar. They put so much on me. I did the SEMA show right before the SEMA show is the big automotive show in Vegas. It's like the second biggest show in town. I cannot tell you the line outside of the booth I was working, and people just didn't want photos. They wanted to talk to me as Trump. I was just becoming this conduit for him. And back in August of 2016, the BBC, actually it was Channel 4, not the BBC, they flew me to DC to do some interviews, and we were in front of the White House, and Matt Freer, very famous reporter in England, he said, do you think Trump will win? And I said, yes, in a landslide. Because that from the time he announced in June of 2015 to then, I saw it. I saw it happening. I saw it every event that I did. It didn't matter if it was a ticketed event or a corporate event. And those, I think, were the most telling. Overwhelmingly, the audiences were for Trump. And the people who were for him, because I did a bit in my act where I'd say, it's great, isn't it great to be we're friends, right? We're all friends. Let's do a poll. I love polls. Polls are great. Who here wants to ruin the country and vote for crooked Hillary Clinton? And the people who were the Clinton fans would applaud, but it was very unenthusiastic. And then I would say, who here wants to vote for me and make America great again? And it was always overwhelmingly for Trump. And it was extremely enthusiastic. And I just saw that enthusiasm gap. And I thought, like, this is crazy. And I really noticed it when I was in L.A. and New York, these places that were supposed to be so pro-Hillary. And it wasn't scanning that way for me. Now, I realize I'm playing Trump and I'm on stage and they're engaged. But at a certain point, you can figure it out. Like, there's a disconnect here. And people were really excited about him, that he was going to change things up and go in and, make a mess of things because things had become so staid and, cemented and, fossilized in the way that they had become.
That's amazing. Well, you had the jump on almost everyone. So your unique perspective.
Yeah, I couldn't convince anybody, but I mean, I would tell people, and people who I know at major publications, no, that's all anecdotal. And I'm like, I'm telling you, this is going to happen. And the election night, I was performing in Canada of all places, but it was for someone who was connected to Trump. And it happened. There was a certain point where it turned, and those states went bing, 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 and they went right down the line, red, 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 red.
That's amazing. Well, I may have to reconnect with you in 2020 for more of an accurate assessment than the media is giving us. But we're talking with John Di Domenico, veteran impersonator, best known, of course, for his killer Donald Trump impression. But as you're hearing, there's a lot more to John than just that. I wanted to ask about one particular element of your performance and your persona. You've said that if you don't mind politics, I've failed. And I think you can watch your Trump and not get it. I think that's
right.
Obviously successful. But we're also seeing a lot of impersonators who we know very clearly where they stand on Trump. And I wanted to get your, you don't have to pick any particular person, but do you think that it makes it harder to be an impersonator when sort of letting that out or letting sort of people get in on the act, or is it just a different method of doing the impersonation? What's your take on that?
I honestly don't see the point. There's one thing I adhere to as an actor is that when you're playing a role, it doesn't matter what you're playing. If you're playing like the nicest guy in the world or you're playing a mass murderer, it doesn't you have to like who you're playing. I approach doing Trump and all of my characters as an actor, not an impersonator, because I'm trained as an actor. And I have to like him, and I want to like him. And there are likable qualities about him. He's a fascinating guy. So that to me is number one. Number two is, as an entertainer, why would you alienate half your audience? That makes no sense to me.
It doesn't to me either, but it happens quite a bit. So,
oh no, it happens quite a bit, and certain people have the infrastructure. And if you look at Saturday Night Live, listen, Alec Baldwin is an incredibly talented, Oscar-nominated. I don't know if he's won an Oscar. He's a very talented guy. There's no doubt about it. His Tony Bennett is dead on. But I think his Trump is so ham-fisted, and it's on purpose. He could do a much more nuanced. I was very lucky. Kate McKinnon in Variety in November, and I cut this out and I put it on Twitter and I put it on Facebook, said in the article, I do a much more nuanced and artful Trump than Alec Baldwin. And I was very proud of that she knew who I was. And she said that. But, I don't get that. I don't get that as an entertainer. You look at all the old school entertainers, they would never take such on anything. We're in such a politically divisive time that I don't think it serves anybody. I don't think it's other than I think it's very self-serving and very self-indulgent. Mm-hmm. As a performer to do that. That's just, and I know I'll get pushback from people about that, from performers. Yeah. But, I'm the type of person where you don't wear your politics on your sleeve. When I was a kid, I remember asking my dad, "What are you, Republican or Democrat?" This is none of your business. and that's how I think it should be. Everyone now gives their political opinions, and 99.9%, it's like, shut up. No one cares what you're saying on either side. And most of it's just everyone's parroting someone else.
I read a kind of interesting tweet from Ruth Buzzy, of all people. I think she's retired now.
I follow her. It's so funny. I love her.
Yeah, she's great. And she had something similar like, hey, we're entertainers. It doesn't mean that our opinions on politics have more sway or more in-depth analysis than the plumber, the guy who's at your store. And it was rather interesting. I also wanted, we talked before about how you became the avatar for Trump, that people connected to you, they whispered in your ear. At the same time, post-election, things have gotten darker, and then we know the division is there. Do you ever get the opposite, where people get angry at you, not because it's John, because they think you're Trump? And how do you? What do you do with that?
I'm pretty good. I'm just a warm and friendly person. So, and we shoot a lot of times when international crews come to Vegas, or we're LA or New York, and they always want to get on the street. And even the people who dislike Trump, I'm able to turn them around, because that's one of Trump's and that's one of his real traits. He's a very charming guy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if I don't like you, go away. We don't want you. You know what? You love me. You love me. I can tell. Look at it. You're coming over to talk to me. You must love me. So we were in Dumbo in New York, and it was a wedding party. And we were shooting for Japanese television, and the wife did not like me. And the husband, he wanted to get a photo with him and his wife. And it was just one of those perfect moments where he was pro-Trump, she wasn't, and I kind of warmed her up, and we had a very funny photo that was used, that they'll probably have forever, in their wedding photo. And I remember I did an event at one of the big security shows, and I had a Muslim woman come up to me pre-show who had on, is it the hijab? Am I saying that right? Or is
I believe so.
I'm not sure. But she came up and she goes, "I don't like you. I don't like you." And I said, "You're going to love me. You're going to love me. You're going to love me." And I did my act, and I went on stage, and I did like 35 minutes. She came back to the booth that had hired me, and she goes, "I like your Donald Trump. I like your Donald Trump." And that to me is that's like the highest compliment.
Yeah, and that's where your acting
warm
chops come
somebody
into
up.
play too, where you're not just a performer and an impressionist, you're an actor, and you're able to there's a charisma, I think, that comes with being a good actor, that you can kind of boulder past some of those impressions.
Right, yeah. And having years and years of having done just decades of improv work help with all of this stuff. Because once you know the character, you're kind of not on autopilot, but I'm comfortable enough to walk the streets of LA or New York or Chicago, or when we shoot these things or do trade shows, not to be able to entertain and keep it fun and keep it light. I did have a situation here in Vegas, where I live, Las Vegas, where we were at Mandalay Bay. And I tell people, I say, if I have to walk any long distance, you've got to assign somebody to me, preferably 2 people, because I like one on each side. And usually there's no issue. And we made it all the way from the convention center in Mandalay Bay to the elevators. And we got on the elevator, and this older gentleman was there. And, if I looked at this guy, if I was to, profile this guy, I'd say he was a conservative, just from the way he looked. And he turned around. He didn't really realize, because I went in first and my people went in behind me, and then turned around. He looked over his shoulder and he saw me, and his eyes, he became enraged, and he started choking me.
Oh, my goodness.
And my 2 security people just pulled his arms off of there. It's not him. It's not him. And he said, "I don't care. He's ruining this country." And it was just one of the, that's the other side of being the avatar, because people have the same, they're not very the ones who aren't happy are not happy, and the ones who are elated are elated.
I have sort of it may be like even a Barbara Walters-esque question, because it's a little bit cloudy. But, you work a lot of the corporate circus you mentioned. Obviously, you're on TV, you're everywhere, and you're an entertainer. What has all of that taught you about people? Maybe looking at 2018, where we stand. I mean, I almost think that you have a unique perspective on how we interact and how we laugh and how we absorb entertainment. Is there anything you kind of learned over the years that you could share? I mean, again, maybe it's sort of a nebulous question, but
no.
You
know, it's corporate world. Having done corporate for so long, this is not specific to Trump. It has obviously a little later, but corporate audiences, because of HR departments, you have to be. It makes you work so much harder. And I think you'll appreciate this. You know, the movie Casablanca deals with some heavy issues. Heavy issues. Mm-hmm. Human trafficking, this thing, that thing. But they do it in a way where the language is it's there. You know it's there, but it's never pronounced. It's never out there, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, basically it's a PG movie. And it's really an R-rated movie if it was done today. When you're doing corporate comedy, it's got to be G. It can't even be PG. So you're really working very hard, especially if you're doing a character, to kind of really find the humor, find the universal humor that character can communicate, and that will work with that corporate audience. And with Trump, it's not harder because there's so much material. It's just you have to strip out anything. There's a lot of things that he has said that I cannot say in a corporate environment. So I have to strip those things out, but keep the essence of who he is, and also make him a little warmer and not as pointed. So I have to work on multiple levels in a corporate environment. If it's a comedy club or a ticketed thing, then I have a lot more free reign. I do a show here every few weeks in Las Vegas called Monday's Dark, which picks a theme, and all the performers who aren't working that Monday rehearse and do a big show Monday night, and then all the money we raise goes to a charity. And that I have a lot more. I have a lot more latitude to be. You know what I mean? To be more Trumpy. To be more Trumpy. And then I just did the Las Vegas Hospitality Association, and that was corporate. So I was hemmed. You know, I hate to say the word hemmed. I can work within any environment, because I always think of someone like Red Fox. I used to watch Red Fox on Sanford and Son. I thought he was incredibly hilarious. And then I heard one of his comedy albums, and I was like, oh, my God, holy mackerel. I was amazed that my record player didn't melt. But he was incredibly funny in that format, too. But the two things never crossed. You know, he played Fred Sanford, and it was television back then. It was, 70s, and they had their standards and practices. And then when he did his nightclub act, he did his nightclub act. So it's an environmental kind of thing, too, with any character, but also with, specifically with Trump right now, since I'm doing him.
One last question for you. If you had the chance to meet with President Trump, let's just say 5 or 10 minutes, are there questions you'd want to ask him that might enhance your impression even further, or would you just sort of be a person to person and asking questions that you were curious about the answers to?
I would love to figure out who influenced him to speak the way he does. Because that's slowing up and speeding up, and I would love to know like the essence of that. I met him. I did his 55th birthday party about, God, how many years ago was this?
That's got to be 15,
19. Yeah, well, he was 55, so he's 71 now. But whatever it was, I didn't have a lot of time with him backstage, but I would love to talk to him and ask him, like, am I getting it right? Am I getting it right? Am I hitting it? You know what I mean? Do you hear me or do I hear you? Or,
Gotcha. Well, I think I can safely say you're getting it pretty darn accurate. So,
thank you so much, Christian. You're doing a tremendous job. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, thank you.
And don't have Bob Woodward on. It's a horrible book. Horrible book. There's no pictures. It's no pictures. There's no pictures. It's all words. Terrible book.
Well, I appreciate your help, John. Thank you again for joining the HitCast.
Always a pleasure.
You can find John on Twitter at JohnnyD23. You You can also find out more about him, his appearances, a lot of his work, johnnyd.net. And there'll be links to these and, of course, a few YouTube videos of John in action on the show notes page at hollywoodintoto.com. And we may talk again in 2020 and see how the ride is going. But again, I really appreciate your time.
Okay.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out hollywoodintoto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at hollywoodintoto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.